Command injection attacks. Command injection attacks are, let's see. The hacker tries to inject some harmful code or some harmful shell statement into your code. When they realize that your code is using the shell to access something, they can actually issue stuff to change user permissions, folder structures, folder permissions, delete folder contents, all that stuff. So that can be very problematic. It's vulnerable through system or the exec command, and then also the eval command. So I don't recommend using any of those unless you're using the method that I cover here to prevent those things. Common uses get access to the shell, so now they can get access to doing stuff directly on the shell under the HTTP or the Apache user. Let's see, create and edit user information, so they could modify users' credentials that way, providing that the HTTP, or I'll just say the Apache user has access to it. Modify folder and file permissions, so they could completely lock you out of the admin section of your website. Delete content on the server, so they could remove your admin section of your website, and now you have no way of updating your content unless you were to replace it with a backed up version. Examples of a command injection attack. So here we have directory list.php, dirlist.php, and you're passing in a query string of dir equals home/me, and that's your home directory. Doesn't really have to be, but just for this example. And then afterwards, you're passing in another statement called remove everything from root. So it'll go through anything that this user that's executing this command has access to. It'll completely wipe those files out. Very, very problematic. Another one, same thing, a dir list, a PHP, question mark, directory is equal to home/me. So this part would still go into, would still be valid by the application's view, but change mode recursive 777 to root. So that gives access to anybody for any of those files that the Apache user has access to. Ways to prevent, whoops, this should be command injection, I apologize. Make use of escape shell argument and escape shell command. What these will do is it'll make sure that they are, if you're passing a specific argument, it will escape the quotes and all the harmful things to that particular argument. But if you're passing in a full command, it will escape that, so that way it's no longer harmful to the system. So remote code injection. This one is kind of, it is problematic, but I see it used less and less, especially the method that I cover here. I'm sure there's another way of doing it, but one of the more common ways is the way I cover here. So hackers can include files from their server on your server. So they can include like badfile.php from their server inside of your application, and that gives that file access to your server, which can be problematic. So include and require functions become a vector for attacks. So that's what people are targeting. Common uses include files from a remote server. Example of remote code injection. This one would be example.com is the website, index.php is just the root file, and you are giving it a query string of page equals home.php. So it's looking for home.php in your folders. And it's just going to load that inside of index.php by an include or a require. So example.com, index.php, and instead of page is equal to home, they're going to badsite.com/getuserlogin.php. And that'll display either a login script or grab information from their session, all kinds of that stuff, and it'll either send it to a database that they have open and they're submitting stuff to, or so it can be trouble. Ways to prevent remote code injection. The best way is to use a whitelist of approved files. So anything that doesn't exist within that list of approved files, it's excuse me, it's going to not run. The next thing is turn off allow URL fopen in Apache config. Whatever you're doing, I recommend that you turn this off regardless. There are ways that you can pull the file in using curl, curl, which that's a much safer approach. So turn off allow URL fopen, or use a whitelist of approved files. Or if you are just manually include the files if you know what they are. Never ever use dynamic user input files if you want the same file. So always use manual include files when you know that it's just a common file. Cross-site remote forgery. This one can be it's a difficult one to understand. So basically we have John, who is a user who's going to his bank. He just logged in, did his transaction, and John is now going back to a forum that he's familiar with, a photography forum. Now, a hacker posted a comment on the photography forum, which has an image in it. And inside the source, instead of having a URL to an actual image, it's actually pulling up a PHP script. So what's happening is this hacker is counting on someone from example.com bank going to this forum, still having their session active, and trying to impersonate them as the request to initiate a transaction. Kind of a hard thing to understand. So basically, John went to the photography.com forum, and then because his session's still active and that code is being rendered on his machine, his cookie information, his session is going to be used to try and initiate that transaction. So if it's transferring money to a separate account, transferring it to a different bank, all those things. I mean, the banks definitely have better ways of securing it, but that's one example that I came up with. Common uses: submit bad data to a website and attempt to get sensitive data back from a website. Let's see, examples of cross-site. Again, example.com is the bank, get funds, account is equal to JSON, and the amount is equal to $1,000. This would make a request on example.com using JSON's account if the session was still active for the amount of $1,000. So that's why you want to provide people with a way to log out and destroy their session. Ways to prevent it. Use session tokens. I did a video on session tokens, so I'll link that here. But basically, it's a unique identifier that's recreated on every form. Anytime that someone's going to be submitting something through a form, that way, when the person hits submit, the post data or the post session token that's submitted with the form is validated on the processing side. So that way, if those two match, you know that it's the same person and not someone trying to impersonate it. If that token's missing, then it's an invalid request. So it generates a unique token known to the user on this page. Session attacks. There are two types of session attacks. There's session hijacking, and session fixation. Session hijacking is that the hacker steals the user's session ID through cross-site scripting. And then session fixation, the hacker forces the user to have a specific session ID that he or she has control over. Examples of session attack. Session hijacking. User visits comment section of the website where the hacker posted a cross-site script attack. The session ID is sent to the hacker, which can be used to impersonate the good user. Session fixation. The hacker posts a link or an image or something like that on example.com, good PHP, and then they're attaching a PHP session ID of 123 to that URL. So now that person has a session ID of 123 for example.com. And the hacker would have control over that session. So once the person logs in, they can get access to their account that way. Ways to prevent session attacks. use SSL encryption at login. I would recommend doing it for your entire website if it needs to be really secure. Ensure that the IPs stay the same. And there's no one way of preventing this, so you're going to have to use a combination of a couple things. But the IP is a pretty decent way of doing it. So if the person logged in under, I don't know, we'll do 207.208.1.23 or something like that for an IP address. If that changed to like 0.78 for the last octet, then those IP addresses are not going to be the same, and you know that they're not the same person. The only exception is on cell phone data and cellular networks. That would be the only exception. Session timeouts. So you want to implement session timeouts for like 15 minutes, and then if that session is no longer active, then it gets destroyed. I think by default it's 15 minutes on Apache. Regenerate session when using session regenerate ID whenever user is re-authenticated. So this will destroy if they come in and they're re-authenticated, whether it's login or whatever. Their session information is going to be destroyed and then recreated using this method. So file uploads. File is just an array of user data. So it's the file name, the temporary file name on the system. The hackers could modify that data as it's coming in, so they could actually, when the request is going through, they can modify it to pull in a file from their server. Common uses is a way to get one of their files on your system. Examples of a file upload attack: hacker changes header information to point to a folder on their server. If the file gets moved to a public directory, they can exploit the server using that file. So ways to prevent it: use is uploaded file and move uploaded file. Is uploaded file will check the temporary directory to see if the files match, and it'll make sure that that was actually a file that was uploaded by the user. And then move uploaded file will do that check ahead of time, so that's part of move uploaded file. And if it does exist, then it'll move it. So they can't try and sneak a file in there or try and upload a file that isn't existing in the temp directory. Let's see. The last one is the char sets. Attacker may try to use unfiltered char sets to exploit a server, since filtering will not pick up on the different char sets. Characters that do not exist in UTF-8 will be ignored and passed through. Solution: use MB convert encoding, pass in your string, and then the encoding you want to go to. Even if it is UTF-8 existing, you want to do this just so that way it converts everything to UTF-8, and then you have one standard platform that you're using across your website. And that's it. That is my presentation on web security. I am going to go through and do some videos on each of these, so it may take a little while, but the videos that I already have in place, I'll post those as well. If you have any questions, send me an email, or if you have a better way of explaining things, post it on Yahoo, on YouTube, post it in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have, or if you have a better way of explaining things, again, post it down there. People always read the comments, so it's always a good thing. So yeah, hopefully you found this video interesting, and hopefully the following information will be helpful in helping you protect your application.